We are buddies.
Well, you certainly are a sorry-looking pair.
We are not sorry.
No, sir. We're just discouraged.
Hello, and welcome to another bonus episode of the Laurel and Hardy podcast. I'm Patrick Vasey, the author of the forthcoming book, Laurel and Hardy Silence, the editor of the all-new Laurel and Hardy magazine, and your host for the next hour or so. Now, usually on the podcast, we take a chronological deep dive into the films of Laurel and Hardy, but occasionally we step aside and focus or celebrate something new, something related to Stan and Ollie. And that's exactly what we're doing today. On the 9th of September 1953, approaching the end of their careers, Stan and Babe took a boat from the States and arrived in the small harbour town of Cobh in Ireland, ahead of another tour of Britain's theatres. The boys assumed that they'd be disembarking unnoticed by the townspeople, but that couldn't have been further from the truth. Now, exactly 70 years on, filmmakers Matt Holt and Andy Hollingworth have produced a heartwarming and affectionate documentary recording that beautiful and moving event. The film, entitled The Last Dance of the Cuckoos, had its world premiere at the Sons of the Desert European Convention earlier this month, fittingly held in Cobh, Ireland. And so today, I'm so happy to say that we'll be chatting with Matt and Andy all about their love for Laurel and Hardy and their experience making the film. I'm really excited about this bonus episode as it's an absolute first for the podcast. Today, I'm happy to welcome not one but two guests onto the show at the same time. Joining me to talk about their love for Stan and Ollie, as well as the recent premiere of their new documentary film, The Last Dance of the Cuckoos, is filmmaker Matt Holt and photographer Andy Hollingworth. So welcome to the Laurel and Hardy podcast, Matt and Andy.
Delighted to be here. Hello.
Thank you for having us.
It's an absolute pleasure, absolute pleasure. It's always great to welcome new guests onto the show, guys. And this is a first, as I said, two at the same time. So let's see how we go. Let's see if we step on each other's toes and talk all over each other. That should be fun. So, yeah, first of all, congratulations on the film. It's absolutely, it's a beautiful and, can I say, emotive tribute to Stan and Babe's visit to Cobh. Is that how you say it? Cobh?
Cobh, yeah.
Cobh, yeah. So we'll talk about the film in a moment or two, if that's okay. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a beautiful film. But before that, let's just find out a little bit about both of you, if that's okay. Sort of about your career at the moment, what you're up to, and also your Laurel and Hardy backstory would be great. I ask all guests how you discovered Laurel and Hardy. If you can remember your earliest memories of them, if you can remember, that would be ideal. So, Matt, we'll start with you if that's okay. So if you could just tell us a little bit about your career as a filmmaker and your earliest memories of the boys.
Yeah, well, career. Well, I started, my favourite toy as a kid was a cassette recorder. So back in the days where you'd go out and buy what we call a C90 cassette tape. And I was, because cameras were very expensive, not many people had like camcorders and that kind of thing. I used to make little radio shows and run around and do impressions and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking like from really early age of 3 or 4 or something like that. Yeah. Influenced by Kenny Everett, who used to do shows, and I'd kind of mimic him and do that kind of thing. So I took this kind of love of audio and I started working in radio when I was at school. And back in those days, in the early 90s, it was audio editing was razor blade and tape. Right. Now cinefilm, and obviously people who know cinefilm, 8mm, 6mm, but that was the same. You spliced it, you cut it, but audio was the same at the BBC back in those days. So when you made a cut, you actually made a cut. Right. And I quickly got into editing. I really loved how you could build a narrative. And in those days, what you would do is if you would keep ums and ers over your shoulder, so you cut out things like that and keep them just in case you made a bad edit, and then you could cut it back in. So I'm
making notes of this. This is good. This is gold.
So it really taught me. I just fell in love with the whole editing process, and then I took that. I went to university. And quickly, because I'd been a telly addict, which we'll kind of go back to that with my Laurel and Hardy influence, but because I've been a telly addict as a kid, I quickly moved from the audio into the video side of it. So I did a foundation course, which was film photography, linear audio and some video editing, which was two-machine video editing, where you had two machines playing and one recording, and you'd put together shot after a shot, and if you wanted to make a change, you had to go back to the tape and kind of go over the top of it. So it was not as laborious as the audio with the razor blade, but it was still quite laborious.
Yeah.
And one of the first things I did when I was at university was I used to tape Laurel and Hardy as a kid. Well, this is weird doing this like this because I really need to go back to way back when I was like 3 years old. So to bring the Laurel and Hardy into my career kind of side of it, one of my earliest memories, and this is the truth, I fell out of a moving car at the age of 3.
Wow.
Now,
this is news to me.
Now, luckily, my mum is 78 and social services can't really get involved now. So, but okay. But in the 70s, you didn't have seatbelts and that kind of thing. And mum had this car, and she'd put the back seats down because she was delivering the wages for a factory. Going around to the outworkers delivering the wages. And I must have been messing about with the door handle. And when she got back in the car after nipping into a newsagent's, the car drove away and I fell out and luckily hit the pavement and bounced onto the pavement rather than bouncing underneath the car.
Wow.
A painter and decorator slid down. It is really low. I slid down the ladder, picked me up and ran after the car that stopped at the traffic lights. The door had shut by that point. My mum was completely oblivious. Knocked on the window and had me in his arms, and she thought she'd run over somebody. Looked in the back seat, I'm not there, put 2 and 2 together. Anyway, she took me to hospital, and I stayed in hospital and had a night, what they call an observation. Being 3 years old, it's a really scary thing. I remember how scary it was. Yeah. But the next day, this is when mum tells me this story. When she came to pick me up, I didn't want to leave because there was a TV on, black and white TV in the far corner. And I said to her, I'm not going yet, Mum. I'm watching Fatty and Thinny. So that is a really early memory. And from that point on, I was a telly addict. I used to watch TV. And in those days, so I was born in 76. So we kind of roll around into the early 80s. As you probably said, by a lot of English people that have been on your podcast, kids' TV used to finish on BBC One, and to keep the kids happy on BBC Two, they would play Laurel and Hardy shorts and things like Harold Lloyd, the compilation Ray for Harold Lloyd, all those compilation shows. And I would eat all this stuff up, Basil Rathbone and all this kind of thing. And I remember even at an early age, I used to be really interested in like how it was put together. Like I remember in Toad in the Hole where the bucket kind of swings in the air and you think that's on fishing wire. That's being pulled even as a kid, but it doesn't break the illusion, but the mechanics of it I was interested in that kind of age. So then fast forward to university, I'd got a wealth of all of these things that I taped off the television because you could do it in those days. So I'd set the video recorder as I got older, and these things would play over the summer, and you would make yourself a compilation tape. And I took these things to university, and the friends that I made at university, I would play these. They weren't that au fait with Laurel and Hardy, or my friend who's now a policeman, quite high up. He was like, "What's this? Laurel and Hardy, black and white. I'm not going to watch that." And I played them these. We'd get bored and we'd put the VHS and we'd play them these things at night time. And he absolutely loved it. So I managed to convert a lot of my friends into liking it. Great. And one of the first things I did at university was we made a Laurel and Hardy film, which I've not put out there publicly because it's absolutely terrible. I play Oliver Hardy. My mate who now works at Granada TV. He's a producer. He played Stan, and my other friends played Tiny, and one was Finlayson with a moustache glued on. It was all around golf. It was an elite. It was in a park in Leeds. But it was great to have all this footage. I'd take it to the university out of hours, and we were able to use the edit suites and made my own little Laurel and Hardy film in my spare time, kind of thing. I was that interested in making this kind of stuff that I was doing stuff in kind of the spare time of it. So then graduated from university and worked for some production companies, ITV production companies, which is Central and Yorkshire TV, making trailers, and then to small production companies in Leicester. And then I set up my own production company back in 2004. And then mainly in the making what we call branded content or corporate video, working for businesses really, because in the 90s, a lot of the Pebble Mill and Lenton Lane and a lot of these Central TV, they all kind of closed down. So a lot of the stuff in the Midlands disappeared. But as the years went on, I'd accrued equipment and had my own stuff that I could, try and make documentaries with. Even though I wasn't being commissioned to make stuff, I'd kind of commission myself to make things that I wanted to make. Yeah. And then they became calling cards. One other thing before I go off the subject, going kind of back to me as a kid, Laurel and Hardy. My great-grandfather was a music hall comedian called Billy Burton.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now, you can find him on Wikipedia. He was involved in the miners' strike, 1926. He had like a caravan bandstand thing, a fundraiser thing. But he had 6 kids, 7 children, six daughters and 1 son, my granddad. So his act expanded into Billy Burton and his 7 chicks. Right. Now, he kind of passed on this love of comedy to his son, which was my granddad. So growing up, my granddad was a really big influence on me. And I think he was a very crazy character. Like one Christmas, he turned up Christmas Eve with a sombrero hat on and a ginger wig, ringing the doorbell and waking us all up. He was just absolutely nuts. But I remember he got me into comedy and encouraged my love of Laurel and Hardy. And in the 80s, you could go to like a record shop and you could buy a full-length poster of Laurel and Hardy. And I did. You could go around those days and like you see the poster on Friends of, Jerry and Chandler in the background. Yeah. It was that popular. You could go to stores and look through not just one, there'd be several things. Yeah. So I used to have posters of Laurel and Hardy. And then when I got to age 15, I asked for a bowler hat for my birthday. And I've still got that hat. And I still go around filming Laurel and Hardy things in this hat. So yeah, it's there's that. Laurel and Hardy, it's kind of come in and out of my life. And I went away from it. And I was less happy when I did go away from it. I realised, I came back to it and rediscovered it all over again, probably on the run up to Stan and Ollie coming out, and revisited a lot of the films and stuff. And it was great to, there's that connection that you have with yourself as a child, and it's still there within you. You kind of grow up, but you grow old, but you don't really grow up, do you? If you like Laurel and Hardy, and you revisit a lot of this stuff. So that's quite a rambling, long answer. That's a great answer that weaves in my day job and also passion of Laurel and Hardy. That's absolutely still growing.
No, that's a great answer, and it's funny. I mean, such a lot of that rings bells with me because I was born in '76. I didn't fall out of a car, having said that. Although I think I was dropped on my head as a baby. I seem to remember being told that.
We're probably both waiting for that Chumps at Oxford moment then when we get hit on the head again and our proper personalities come out. We're actually much cleverer than we are.
Yeah.
Good gracious, Meredith, why don't you fix that window? Hit me right on the cranium.
Your lordship, you've got your memory back. You know me.
What on earth are you talking about? Of course I know you. Where's my tea and crumpets? Hurry.
Oh, it's a miracle. A miracle.
But no, exactly the same. And I grew up watching BBC Two, Harold Lloyd, a pair of glasses and a smile, and all of that. Yeah, absolutely. And you could go around to it like Athena and buy big posters of Laurel and Hardy. I had them on my walls and everything. And then I drifted away from it. And then the run up to Stan and Ollie made me think, hang on, I haven't spent time with my boys for ages. And then suddenly it all just flowed back out again. Yeah. And I think I'm a much better person with Stan and Babe in my life. My wife might argue. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, we won't go into that.
We won't go into that. Absolutely right. Absolutely. Andy.
Oh, yeah.
Let's hear from you, sir.
Okay, so my earliest memories of Laurel and Hardy, I'm about 10 years older than you guys. However, that BBC Two moment is actually my moment as well. And I used to come home from school on a Friday, and I can distinctly remember, just like you lot, turning over from rhubarb and custard at 6 o'clock over to BBC Two. And everything you said there, Matt, Harold Lloyd and Basil Rathbone, I definitely remember, and the Marx Brothers at times, and Stan and Ollie, yes, absolutely. And I've got this thing whereby your comedy heroes as a child sit with you the deepest. I've always felt that. And it's the same with the sitcoms that you see. I can remember watching Dad's Army at school and the comedians. And you would go to school the day after and you would you would try and be that comedian and tell those jokes or say stupid boy or don't tell him Pike or all that sort of stuff. So yeah, absolutely, that was exactly my entry into Laurel and Hardy too. I'm a full-time school teacher. However, in the time that I'm not teaching, I photograph comedians. I've been doing it for 28 years. I fell into it. My granddad was a miserable so-and-so. And the only time that he ever laughed that I remember was at Charlie Williams on The Comedians. And my mum says that I used to sit on a stool at my grandma's house and stare at my granddad laughing at Charlie Williams on The Golden Shot and The Comedians. So when I was in my mid-20s, I wrote to Charlie, who was long retired. I just wanted to shake his hand and say thank you. And I went and I took a couple of pictures as a souvenir. And that was in 1995, and then I photographed my comedy heroes, so Rick Mayall, Victoria Wood, Alexis Sale, and then agents would then kind of contact me and say, we like stuff, would you like to do some stuff? And I haven't looked back from there, and I'm incredibly lucky. I get to work with the best people, and while still remaining an amateur, and the people will wait for my half term. And it is just fabulous. I feel very lucky.
That's wonderful. And I've got to say, just looking at the portfolio on your website, it's probably easier to list the people you haven't photographed in stand-up comedy. What a portfolio. The names on there are just unbelievable. Eddie Izzard, Ricky Gervais, Dave Chappelle. I mean, it's just ridiculous, and they're just on and on. I was looking through these different pages. It's absolutely crazy, but yeah, just fabulous. Just as a matter of interest, do you often get into conversation with them about Laurel and Hardy? Do any of them sort of reveal, a joint appreciation?
Yeah, from time to time. For example, Harry Hill and I've been for 10 years. I've been photographing artifacts. And I've shot about 19,000 now. It's almost hit 20,000 comedy tickets. So sometimes I'll take a box of tickets if we're shooting somebody, and people like Harry Hill, you can tell that you fish out a little batch of tickets, and they flip. They can't believe that you've got these things, and then you start discussing, and yeah, definitely, absolutely,
fantastic. That's great, wonderful. Well, thanks for sharing that, guys. That's brilliant. So, if we move on to the film, so just give us a little bit of background as to the idea. Where did the idea come from for the film, and how did you two hook up?
Well, about 2017, I came across the story of Adrian Cabrez and his dad online somewhere, and I thought, that it was such a beautiful romantic fairy tale, really, and so I thought, I wonder if this guy is still alive. And I did a bit of digging online, and I found out that he was still alive. And through Father Frankie, Frankie Doodle, who is Jimmy Cricket's son, who is a Catholic priest. I contacted
Frankie
him
Doodle,
said,
that's his name.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And so I contacted him and said, could you put me in touch with Cobh Cathedral? And he did. I got in touch with Adrian, who was still very much alive, and he's a wonderful character. And I had this idea of taking Stan Laurel's bowler from Ulverston, taking it up to the top of the bell tower, and taking a picture of it while Adrian played, if he would, the Cuckoos song again, as his dad had done in 1953. So he, through, over several months, got in touch, and then COVID happened. So everything got put back. And then Matt contacted me through another Matt who runs the Morecambe and Wise archive, really. And Matt said, would you like to make a film? And I said, no, because I'm very shy. But then we got chatting it, and it became, just through chatting, we hadn't met until the week of the film. We've not met at all. But his love of Laurel and Hardy came across, and his sincerity and his love for comedy came right across. So we then started talking about, we might make this film. And so then we started, researching a bit more, and we planned it and we did it.
Well, I remember, again, there's another one of those reaching out through Twitter. because I'd seen Andy's work over the years, and it's obviously this is an audio medium, and we're describing photographs, but Andy's work is really cinematic and quite like film noir. There's always like a strong light source.
Yes, yeah,
and really striking imagery that and my heroes, Harry Hill, Tim Vine. I'd seen all these characters in these photographs come up, and I thought, I want to work with Andy. And then reached out through Twitter, and Andy almost immediately said, give me your phone number. So we started talking, and I was really keen to make a film about behind the scenes of Andy doing his thing, and kind of get the secret of how he photographs these comedians. So comedians are quite animated, or they can be literally the opposite. They can be really, really shy. And I was wondering how he works and how he gets, this would make a great film. And it was, no, I don't want to go on camera. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to do it. And I was like, how are we going to do this? But then, the love of the Laurel and Hardy thing. And when Andy started, he said, do you know the story of Cobh and the bells? Now, I'd read the McCabe books as a teenager. I must have got them in the early 90s. So there were 3 books, but the main one that I remember is Mr. Laurel and Mr. Hardy. Mm-hmm. And there's about a paragraph in there that talks about when 1953, when they came to Ireland. But it's quickly covered over. And I reread the Simon Luvish book recently. That has 2 lines of what is a really interesting story. So when Andy said, "Oh, the Irish," and I said, "Yeah," and I just kind of said that the bells rang out. That's it. And Andy's like, "Oh, no! I've been researching it, and there's this something," and started telling me all this other stuff. And if you work in the visual media, you start imagining it, what it's going to be like, and but. Because the timings of it, and we only had like a little short window. We decided we were going to make it this year, and we had a short window where we could both do the film, and we were trusting each other because neither of us had met each other, and we're going to go off on this odyssey together and share a room, folks. Not quite share a bed.
Very Laurel and Hardy. I love
Absolutely.
it.
Very Laurel and Hardy.
That's method.
We did have a horse with us. But there was this. But we both of us had this belief. I was thinking, well, this, it's a Laurel and Hardy story. What could go wrong? It's going to be amazing. And Andy's, had been researching all this stuff. And again, what we didn't realise was the anniversary was, it's 70 years, isn't it? 70 years just gone in September, beginning of September. And we didn't realise that even when we'd booked the tickets, booked the Airbnbs and the hotels, and we're going over there. We were just kind of like, oh, this is the time to do this story, because we probably should say, we haven't actually said kind of fully what the story is.
I was just going to say, for the benefit of anybody who hasn't seen it, because there'll be a lot of people, most people probably haven't seen the film yet, because it only premiered at the recent the European convention in Cobh.
Yeah.
Just for those people who aren't aware of the film, do you want to just jump in and just give a background to what the film is about?
Okay,
please?
well,
that'd be great.
In 1953, on the final tour, please, you guys know more about this than me. So they travelled from New York to Cobh, and Babe didn't have the correct. He'd worked in Britain, and he was an American citizen, so he'd worked within the year. So there were complications with regard to his income tax. So they had to go to Ireland first before coming to Britain. So they got on the SS United States, the SS America, sorry, and they travelled across, and they thought they were coming to just a quiet little town, and they didn't know that people would know that they were coming. Now, we found out from Liam Muldowney, who's brilliant in Ireland, hello Liam, that the local paper had published the passenger list. So it'd come via telegraph or some way. So as the ship comes into the harbour, and then they get transferred to a tender. And when the tender comes in, they see that there are hundreds of people there. literally hundreds of people, and there are loads of small boats. And Adrian Gabers, who was there, he told us that Stan and Ollie actually turned round to see what the fuss was about. They looked physically behind them because they didn't know that the people were there. And we'll talk more about the school kids in a bit. But so as their tender comes in, the cathedral, St. Coleman's Cathedral on top of the hill, plays the Cuckoo song. And it's beautiful. And they look at each other and they burst into tears. And Stan later, if you read his letters, and if you look at the "This Is Your Life," which is amazing, Stan calls it the greatest day of his life. So they come onto the land and they ask to be taken to the bell ringers. So they get bundled into the car by a guy who represented the liner company, and they race up the hill. Now, when they get to the top of the hill, what they don't realise is St. Coleman's Cathedral has what's called a carillon, which instead of having a team of bell ringers pulling ropes, you have a 41-bell keyboard. So the person who played the keyboard was one man, and that was Steph Gabers. And he was standing there with his son, Adrian, who was 10 years old. And they both they're overcome with emotion. And Adrian doesn't really recognize them because he says they're in lounge suits and they're not wearing their bowler hats and they look older than he recognizes them from the screen. So that's quite funny. But they have this long embrace, and then they get bundled back into the car and they go and kiss the Barney Stone, and away they go. So that was the story. But the thing that really attracted me was Adrian was 10 years old at the time, and he was at the boys' school. And he found out that Stan and Ollie were coming, and Laurel and Hardy were his heroes. So he began a near riot at the school at break time. They pushed the headmaster backwards, and he ended up being, because they were pleading with him to, can we go and see them? They're down the road, they're just down the hill. So he said, oh, off you go, away with you. And as they then raced past the girls' school, the girls did exactly the same. Brilliant. And the nuns let all the girls go. So there were literally, a couple of hundred kids racing down the hill in Cobh. And then all the people began to come out of the shops and say, wondering what the noise was. And we were told that the bank was left unattended. The 6 members of the bank staff all went out into the street, and everybody raced down. So it was kids bunking off school that made Stan and Ollie, it made the greatest day of their life. And that there was something it's like a fairy tale. That's the story of it. That's the basis of the story.
But also because Andy loves the artifacts, comedy artifacts. I don't know how he managed to wangle this, but obviously we took Stan Laurel's bowler hat. So the idea that Andy sold to me was we're going to do on this road trip, and we're going to take kind of the spirit Stan Laurel with us in this bowler hat.
Amazing.
So we met the first day of filming. Was Andy was giving a talk about Victoria Wood at the Winter Gardens in Blackpool, and I drove up to meet Andy for the first time. We jumped in the car and we drove to Blackpool and started the story there as before going on to the Ulverston Museum to pick up the hat. So the story starts really introduces Andy talking about his career and showing off his amazing collection of artifacts.
So that's why you're in Blackpool to start with, because I know from those very first opening shots, you just think, my God, I've got to watch this. It just brings you straight, because those first aerial views of Blackpool, and also just the fonts, the credits, and everything, you just think this is quality straight away. You think this is worth watching. This is going to be good, and it really doesn't disappoint. And that, what I think is so lovely is that the fact that you did take the hat with you, and the hat is kind of the star of the show. Andy's the one obviously presenting, and he's the one on the camera. But the hat is it's almost like another star of the show there.
Totally.
It's just so nicely done. Really nicely
done.
We
didn't. I didn't expect this to be as an emotional a film. It was really behind the scenes. Andy and I got on really, really well, and there's loads of larking about, and we're like two kids enthused with going off on this odyssey with Stan Laurel's bowler hat. I mean, it's amazing.
Just Stan Laurel's bowler hat. That was just
yeah. But there's two parts that really get the emotion. The first one was when we go to Dublin and go to the Olympium, the Olympia, isn't it? Theatre. Yeah. Because Andy had in his head to take a particular photograph of Stan Laurel's bowler hat in the spot where Stan and Ollie stood when they appeared there as part of it. I think it was a charity thing when they were travelling up from Cobh to Dunleary. They stopped off in Dublin, did this thing at the Olympia. And so Andy had this image in his head. And when we captured that image, both of us, you can hear him, I actually say something on camera. You most of the time trying to keep my mouth shut because it's supposed to be invisible, you know. I'm the eyes and ears of the audience, and you know, she's trying to show what's going on. But we get this shot. Well, Andy takes his photograph, and I film him taking the photograph. Yeah, and I think I say something like, "Oh, wow, that was amazing," and no, I think you say, "You did it, Andy," and Andy goes, "Oh, we did it," and then we both get a little bit emotional. Looking at the spotlight of Stan Laurel's bowler hat, you know, 70 years after they appeared there.
Gee, that's swell photography.
And then the second thing, we don't want any spoilers, but obviously then when we went to the cathedral, took the hat to the cathedral and took it back, took it all the way up to the top of the cathedral to place it next to Adrian as he plays the tune again, you know, really emotional. And I'm glad I swung across pretty much at the time that Andy was welling up. And Andy's, folks, you've not heard the preamble to this recording, but Andy's quite camera shy, which is a strange thing for a photographer, but there you go. And we've both got, me and Patrick have both got our cameras on, and Andy's not got his camera on. But I thought, you know, this is really brave of Andy to somebody that he's never met before in a situation like that. I've got a camera right in his face, and he's not. I think he just completely ignored me. He's caught in the moment of listening to the bells playing and focus on Adrian playing fantastic. And you know, I'm more emotional now, and I was more emotional in the edit. When I started to put this stuff together with the music and everything, that's kind of when it hit me. At the time, I was a bit more detached from it because you're thinking of things like focus of, you know, or recording levels. Are you doing all this kind of stuff, which takes you away from it a little bit? But it was great that we captured that, and didn't expect this to be more of a tear-jerking film. Thought it was going to be like a road movie of, you know, laughs and kind of, but there is that in there, but there's a lot of emotion thinking back. Everybody's got a connection, haven't they, with Laurel and Hardy? It's a personal connection. You've got like your public connection when you sit and you watch the films with other people together, probably as an older person. That's right. But it goes back to that part when you were a little kid or when you first saw it, and it's way within you. And part of it is, it's a bit like that Rosebud thing, isn't it, with the Citizen Kane? It's like going back to the little thing that maybe you thought was lost, or maybe you thought was gone, but it's still there. And you know, when you watch some of these films, you laugh, but at the same time, I think there's another emotion in there, which is a bit of, you know, melancholy, I don't know, wistfulness or whatever. And there's always two things happening there. And you know, even now, I mean, I reread Lubish's book on holiday, and when you get in towards the end bit, you find yourself getting emotional. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, watching Stan and Ollie, you find yourself getting the Steve Coogan and John C. Reilly. I know it wasn't for everybody, the John C. Reilly film. Yeah. But even just thinking about it, and it's the same with the Cobh thing, even when you start thinking it through, imagining them at the end of their careers, suddenly getting another boost of energy from an audience of people that they didn't expect, and they didn't expect to be remembered, and they're supposed to be there in secret, and they're really just supposed to be there to go and write their script and slipping under the radar, and suddenly they get this massive outpouring of love. And 70 years later, even though these people are not around, and you film this scene and put it together, you kind of feel that magic is still around. And that's testament to all the people that made the Laurel and Hardy films, but it's testament to Laurel and Hardy themselves.
Absolutely. What I might not have told you at the time, Matt, was that my way of getting through the film was going to be I was just going to ignore you. I was going to ignore the camera, you as the camera.
Yeah.
So I did. And there are bits where when we're unpacking the kit after we've photographed Rob Wilson, but I'm talking to you rather than I'm talking to the camera. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
The bits, when I first saw the bits about Blackpool, I watched it with Julia, and I'm like, I don't remember that. I don't remember him filming that. And that is your skill, is as well as getting all the technical bits right, and you're right, Patrick. Those aerial shots for me make the film, and you just get on with stuff, and it allowed everything to happen. And that was kind of my way of getting through it. But you're absolutely right. I didn't know, when you swing across when we're up in the cathedral, I didn't know that you'd filmed that. So there you go.
It was a really poignant, very beautiful moment, and I think it took me by surprise, because I was watching the film on a fairly big screen, and I got my headphones in, so it's quite a very personal experience when watching it in that way. And I mean, I know the story of Cobh when they arrive. As you say, Matt, I read it in the McKay book, so I'm kind of familiar with it. But you can't kind of understand how that sounded. You can't put yourself in that place. And what this film really beautifully does, you hear what it sounded like, so you know exactly what it sounded like. You get in the aerial views again. I mean, you can't really spoil it. I don't think there are spoilers, because you have to see this to experience it.
Oh, thank you.
You've got the aerial views of the bay and the cathedral, and that beautiful sound of the carillon, is it called?
Yes.
The carillon bells are ringing. And it's just... And because it's that tune that is sat with you in your heart for so long, so many years, and I was welling up, and I thought, you stupid boy. And then in that second...
You stupid boy.
Andy's on screen... welling up, and you're thinking, he's exactly the same as me. And I felt such a connection to Andy at that moment, and I'm sure there are so many people who watch that film that will feel exactly the same thing. And then because I didn't know it was coming, I think it makes it even better. So maybe that is a spoiler of sorts. But it's just
from a filmmaker point of view, the best thing you can do is get an emotion from somebody. Now, I set up Spoon Jar Films. It's called Spoon Jar Films, and that after Tommy Cooper, because that was my late father's favourite comedian.
Right.
And not anybody that kind of a lot of comedians get it. They're, Spoon Jar Films. But the idea was to entertain people, and I thought to make people laugh. But it's even sweeter when you get that other emotion, when people, tears of joy or whatever. But when you get that, because it's hard to do that with a leaflet or a pamphlet or something. That's where cinema and film comes into its own, is that emotion machine. And you can get it from photography. I mean, Andy's photographs are really, really stunning, and the photographs that he took of our journey and of the hat in all these different places, and the people who are related to the people that were there at the time, they're absolutely stunning. And they stand alone as pieces of art, which we'll probably touch on later on. But when you put everything together, and you've got the subject of Andy as well in there. And another thing we didn't, again, this is probably, we should have done a bit more research, but foolishly, both of us thought that when we got to the cathedral, we'd walk in and the carillon, this massive keyboard thing that plays the bells, would be on the ground floor. So we thought, so we got all of our kit, not just the video equipment, but Andy's got all of his photographic equipment, and we meet Adrian, who's fantastic on the steps and tells us the whole story of them coming up to the cathedral in the car and everything else. So then he tells us, would you like to go and see the carillon? We go, yeah. And we walk in and quite quickly take a right turn through a side door to the tower, where we're going to then walk up 214 steps. And at that point, I switched the camera back on, because I was thinking I'm going to walk in, set it all up nice, this kind of thing. So I'm then filming really wobbly kind of shots, which I don't like to do, but you've got to capture the moment. And I'm behind Andy, and it's so narrow. It was actually rubbing on our camera bags, and it wore my camera bag away by the time I got back down at the end of it. It made like a cone. It rubbed it away. So we go all the way up, following Adrian, who's he's older than us. I'm not going to say, but he's met Laurel and Hardy folks, so you can do the maths on this, or the math, as we say in America. And so I filmed both of them going up, and you can actually hear a bit like in the Laurel and Hardy films where you can hear them wheezing after running around up blockheads, isn't it, when they're going up and down the stairs? That happened in real life.
6. How long did you say it would take us to get up there?
Oh, just a jiffy.
How far's a jiffy?
About 3 shakes of a dead lamb's tail.
Didn't think it was so far. Surprising the distance. Seven. How many with 7 makes 13?
6.
Swell, we've only got 6 more jiffies. Won't be long now.
We got up to the resting part, which is where the clock, there's like the clock faces that let the light in, just below where the carillon now sits. It used to be there, and they've moved it up. So that we stopped there for Adrian to point that out, and we're literally. And Adrian's completely in his stride because he's doing it 3 times a day, or how many times a day he does it.
Yeah.
And obviously he's then got to perform. He's then got to play. But I wanted to capture that because I don't think people have filmed at the cathedral before and kind of told part of this story before, but you don't get the idea that this carillon is right at the top. And capturing that with Andy, and then we come back later on and take some photographs. And that rested place, and again, you have to go through these tiny doors and all that kind of stuff, and filming that and letting the audience. I mean, you could say we didn't do a research, and folks, we didn't do a research, so slap on the wrist for that. But in not doing a research, like not knowing about Liam until we got to the museum, we find out about Liam over in Dublin, who then gives another part of the story. And he's written a great book called Near Dublin, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
Near
right.
Dublin. Yeah. But also by not doing that, you get this genuine recording of what's happening as it unfolds. Obviously, I'm playing the part. I'm on the eyes of the audience, and you genuinely see us going up the tower and being a bit dishevelled at the end of it, and also uncovering a part of this story that then takes us off in other little directions. It's not just the Cobh story. The Cobh story is really important, but there's other stuff that wasn't probably as well documented in the McCabe book and in the Luvish book of other stop-offs and other bits and bobs that they did in other parts of Ireland, which gives that full story of kind of what happened just before the last tour that they did, as they're writing Birds of a Feather. It kind of gives you, and you get, whether this is true or not, obviously it's conjecture, but you get this feeling of, if they were boosted by what happened in Cobh, and then they went on to, play a lovely little show in Dublin and then go off to have a few weeks at the hotel up in Dunleary. You just get this idea of what a lovely little holiday spent together and be re-energized, thinking, oh, maybe we could do this again, this, and maybe that went into the writing of the last sketch.
Yeah, Matt's right there. We were literally leaving the museum, and Matt Cooper, Mark wasn't there that day, unfortunately, but Matt was there, and we were literally walking out, and Matt said, "Oh, you need to speak to Liam," and we both went, "Who's Liam?" And then I did a Facebook friend request, and then we managed to call him. But Liam had so much depth to the film because he's got all that literal local knowledge. So he was able to tell us, for example, about the fact that in the afternoons, they used to sit on the pier at Dunleary, and that is the final shot of the film. Is the hat on the pier, which for me is the best shot, and that's going to be the poster of the film. But it wasn't. We agreed on kind of no script and minimum retakes. I think we did. We did. There's a bit where I'm sat on the pier right at the end, and ironically, because I had a certain thing to say, and Matt was flying a drone over my head, I think that's the bit where we did about 3 or 4 retakes. Is that Matt? That right, Matt?
Yeah. I think also we were literally had to catch a plane, so we timed it so it was to the wire. So we were finishing there, then getting the taxi back to catch the plane back to John Lennon Airport. And so there's a little bit of, when the clock's ticking.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was windy. There was some people chattering off to the left. I had the camera and the drone ready because I wanted to cut from the main camera to the drone. And drones don't record sound, folks. So you then have to sync the sound together. So Andy's delivering his line, but then we're going to use that sound underneath the drone shot as a wider shot to kind of fly off over the bay. And I think the pressure on all of us at that point, we were tired. There were just a few takes. I want to just drop in another story. It's one of those, there's a lot with filmmaking, and when you meet people, like obviously Laurel and Hardy basically brought me and Andy together. That's all these years later, that's what's happened, which is a fantastic thing to happen. But early on in lockdown, I was contacted on Facebook by a gentleman called Eric Tolkien. Out of the blue, we became friends on Facebook through Laurel and Hardy, and he sent me a message saying, "Greetings from Florida. I would like to mail you a special gift and need your mailing address. Don't worry, it won't go bang. It was something Lois Laurel gave me years ago that belonged to the boys."
Wow.
Now, I didn't know this guy. We'd converse backwards and forwards on Facebook. We've never met. We still never met to this day. And I gave him my address. And sure enough, about a week or so later, an envelope turned up. This was about 2021, it would have been. I opened it, and inside are 2 luggage labels. And one says Laurel and Hardy Hotel, and one says Laurel and Hardy Theatre. Right. And for a start, I didn't get it. What are these? Then within there's a letter explaining that these were the luggage labels that went on the cases when the boys went on tour. So they'd put a luggage label on that said Laurel and Hardy Theatre. It's Laurel and Hardy Company Theatre, so that all their clothes for the theatre would go to the theatre in the trunks. And Laurel and Hardy Hotel was all their clothes, all their normal clothes, the beret and whatever they wanted to wear when they weren't as the characters. And obviously that was to split off the luggage. And these were gifted to me, and I don't even want to know how much they're worth. But when we were putting this together, Andy said, I need to get a box to put Stan Laurel's hat in, because obviously it's a very sacred item and very valuable. We want to make sure we look after it. Yeah. And a lot of the looks to camera that Andy gives are real when he's worried about having this on the journey with us. Yeah. So I told Andy this story, and he said, "That's great. Can you scan them, and I will make a facsimile and glue that onto the hat box that I've got." I managed to get a hat box which fits it perfectly, fits Stan Laurel's hat perfectly, and it did. It was a Moss Bros hat box of the time. Keeps it absolutely perfectly safe. So we had this luggage label on, the facsimile of. I've got the real ones kept very, very safe.
Yes, yeah.
But the wonderful thing is, we made this film to play at an exhibition in Florida. Eric has retired, lives in Florida. He used to live in California. He now lives in Florida. He's got a connection with Stan Laurel. Obviously, he was gifted these from his mother, and his mother and Lois Laurel were friends. I don't know the full story; it's written down. But isn't that an amazing full circle that I was given these without knowing Andy? And I thought, these are fantastic. I don't know what use they're going to be. I'll frame them. They're wonderful. Thank you very much. Yeah. And then we sent as we started the film, we sent Eric a message saying, "You're never going to believe this, but we're making this film. We put a facsimile of the luggage that's going to be there with Stan Laurel's hat, and it's playing in Florida. So hopefully it's playing next month. Hopefully Eric will get to see it. But it's just this wonderful thing. Again, if Stan and Ollie have brought us together, and Eric kind of vicariously, or whatever you want to call it, via osmosis or through the internet. But to have these, and we then tracked down the photograph of where were these luggage labels? Not many photographs of them on the luggage, but there is a couple, I think, in Paris of them, of Stan and Ollie goofing around with one of these luggage labels on a case, on a pile of case at a railway station. So it was great to have the hat, but also have a box that gives you a visual representation of the time and when they would have done the tour.
Yeah, it became like a totem for us, didn't it? And I was photographing this box everywhere, but like Matt says, it never went out of my sight. And it was under my bed wherever we stayed. It was It was literally under the bed.
It's not in the bed then. I thought it might be in the bed.
No, the horse
Between
was
the
in
two
the
of you.
I had Laughing Gravy washing in the tub.
That was great. That was really great. But it just makes you feel, and I hear this quite often. In fact, I've experienced it myself, where you almost feel as if it's being gifted to you by the universe or by the boys themselves. They want this to fall into your lap for this specific reason. You know, Randy quite often says things just fall into his lap. He doesn't know how, doesn't know why, but things just fall into his lap and he's able to do something with it and share it with the world, which is just even better. And, you know, very similar stories with me and Russ, who I do my Laurel and Hardy stuff. He's the other monkey. You know, it just happened, you know, and it's such a great bond that we've now got together. The same as you two, you know, it's a real friendship that's developed from nothing, from absolute strangers. And the things that we both bring to it have just, you know, we're able to create lovely stuff that people are really, really enjoying. And it's a wonderful gift. But it just feels like there's something or somebody somewhere who is designing this for us. And, you know, we just have to be grateful for that, I guess.
Yeah, and we do this because, I mean, you do your podcast and your magazine, and I do stuff as a filmmaker, Andy does his photography, because you're documenting it, but you also kind of want to pass it on, introduce it. You get a thrill. You get a thrill out of, especially when you play something like this in front of an audience. Yeah. We haven't yet experienced it in front of an audience personally. When it played out in the Cobh, it was part of the convention, and unfortunately we couldn't be there due to prior commitments, and we didn't really know at the time of making the film that this anniversary was coming up. Yeah. But when you introduce somebody, or if you introduce people to Laurel and Hardy, you're watching them watching Laurel and Hardy, and with a smile on your face, waiting to kind of get that reaction. Yeah. But there was a Laurel and Hardy moment. I don't know whether Andy remembers this. Not during the filming in Ireland, but when we got back late at night to the airport. We got back the other side, you collect your baggage and all this kind of thing. We've got camera equipment, we've got Stan Laurel's hat, we're very, very tired, it's dark, it's late at night, about 10 o'clock. And we walk out of the arrivals lounge and into the street at John Lennon Airport, and suddenly we're looking at each other like, where do we park the car?
That is true.
And we were in such a joyous moment getting there when we started the filming that neither of us had paid any attention. We kind of automatically parked the car off somewhere and walked all the way to the airport, took some photographs and all that kind of thing. So there was this moment where we just kind of looked at each other blankly, like, it's late, how can I find the car? And then I remembered, well, Andy, I filmed you all the way from the car to the airport. So we got the footage back and played it in reverse. all the landmarks and all the lefts and rights and the turns that we made, a bit like in Flying Deuces, which we use in the film, and found a way back to the car. And we kind of like, look, we had kind of a right smile on our face because we were, when you're tired it's a bit like, the music box, we're lugging all this stuff around you. But it was just one of those moments, and loads of people get those moments as well. If you're a Laurel and Hardy fan, you get those moments. Sometimes you're on your own and you just kind of chuckle to yourself, don't you? Where either you see somebody doing something that's a bit Oliver Hardy, a bit pompous and over the top, or a bit, they have that quizzical look of Stan and they're doing something, or it's you and a friend that you're with. Because Laurel and Hardy, they're a double act. It's about a relationship. It's two people interacting with each other, and a problem, or a series of problems, or problem people that they're dealing with. And we all have that. We all have that in our lives. And that's why I think Stan and Ollie are still relevant. They're way ahead of the time because they tackle these universal subjects. We've still got luggage. We're still all lugging things around, even though cameras are getting lighter and stuff's getting lighter. We end up taking too many things with us, don't we? Because you can. So we've still got all these problems. You still come across cantankerous people of authority. There's all these things are still there. And so it's all there in Laurel and Hardy. And if you've never watched a Laurel and Hardy film, I feel sorry for you, because you need to go and see that a lot of it, and especially in sitcom. And these things, Laurel and Hardy was 4:3, it was square, which is, kind of what a lot of television was like up until about the early mid-2000s when widescreen came out, TVs. So you can see it through all the sitcoms of the 70s and 80s, and whenever there's a relationship with two people or whatever, it goes through, and it goes through all the double acts. We've just had over here, what's it called? Desert Island Discs with Aid Edmondson.
Oh yes,
who emotionally talks about his love of Laurel and Hardy, and obviously he was in. With Andy spoke about Rick Mail, who he took photographs of. That is right, isn't it, Andy? You took photographs of Rick. Yeah. Rick Mail, and they were in the double act of they were in the double act that went through Stand Up and The Young Ones, but then they became their sitcom was Bottom, which was but you can see it all the way through that. And Morecambe and Wise, I'm a big fan of Morecambe and Wise, and my love of Morecambe and Wise on Twitter, I became friends with Matt that runs the Eric and Ernie thing, and that's again how I think basically Andy said, "Who is this Matt Holt filmmaker?" And the other Matt said, "Oh, he's all right. We can get on to each other." They kind of back me up. But there's that lovely line through that with Eddie Braben, and you've probably been said on your podcast before, but where Eddie Braben was trying to sell the idea of Eric and Ernie being in a sketch, being in bed together. Yeah. And Eric and Ernie weren't having it for whatever reason. They were like, no. And Eddie Braben says, well, if it's good enough for Laurel and Hardy, it should be good enough for Morecambe and Wise. Yeah. And although there's a lot of Phil Silvers in Eric Morecambe and a lot of Abbott and Costello in the backwards and forwards quick chat and everything, there's a lot of physical stuff that's, look at the stripper sketch and that stuff. There's loads of nods and winks to Laurel and Hardy. And they even did a documentary in the 70s, which is on YouTube, where they did the voiceover, Laurel and Hardy documentary, where Eric and Ernie did the
Cuckoo.
voiceover.
The Cuckoo documentary,
where they really spell it out. That obviously it must have been really easy to get them on board for that project. And that's what I found with Laurel and Hardy is if you mention that you're doing something. Probably Andy can talk about the Harry Hill voiceover section. When you're making a film, you often do a guide voice. You write the script as you want it to be, but you need to edit it and make sure the timing's right. So you often do a guide voice. And because I've started off in radio, I'm able to kind of do a read of slow enough read, not too quick, not too slow. So I can get kind of an idea of where to cut everything around. So we wrote this script, and I'll hand over to Andy now. So we've got a version, probably version 3 or 4 of this film, of the last Dance of the Cuckoos. And we knew wanted a voiceover for it to give it a bit more gravitas. I'll let Andy pick up from here.
Well, yeah. So I've always loved Stan's letters. There's 2 or 3 letters that I've put together, which just describe the day. But we wanted somebody to do. So Matt does that at the end, but we needed somebody to do the voiceover for the film. And I contacted Harry, and within, I think, 5 minutes, the email came back, yes, I'd love to. And he had 1 day out of the bake-off, because he does the junior bake-off. He literally had 1 day at home. And by, I think it was at 7:30 a.m., he'd done it. And he also did loads of different variants and little bits for us to choose from, and he was fantastic. He was just perfect.
What a guy. That's great. I love Harry Hill. Fantastic. He does a great job as well. And again, I think that voice, because I mean, you're used to Harry Hill with the TV burp and that kind of jovial kind of, but this is quite a serious, but it's brilliant, and the how it marries with the visuals is great. Yeah. It really gives it some gravitas, as you say, from the outset. Really, really well done. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
I think we've covered all the questions I've got here. I haven't asked you a single one. I don't think we've covered pretty much everything. Well done, you two.
Thank you.
What was your kind of your standout kind of memory from the experience? What have you taken away with you, Andy? We'll start with you.
Really, it was the realization that a bunch of kids bunking off school made the greatest film comedians who have ever lived. It gave them their finest day. And almost at the final curtain, they finally realized how much they were loved. And it was kids that did it. And that really got to me. And we met this child who is now an elderly, wonderful gentleman who he started it. And it's a fairy tale, and that really got to me, and that's lovely.
You see, just with you saying that there, I get goosebumps just thinking about that. You know, it's just that there's such a strong connection to Laurel and Hardy that we as fans, film buffs, whatever you want to call it, it goes beyond film buffery. It is it's like having family members, and you sort of have that real. It's such a strange thing to have that emotional reaction to two people you've never met in a totally different era from when you were alive. So. Thank you for giving us that, and certainly Andy for that moment in the cathedral when you were, and I know you weren't doing it for the camera, but it connected with me because I was feeling exactly the same thing at that moment. So that was wonderful.
Smashing.
Matt, what about you? What do you take away from it?
Well, it goes back to the little 3-year-old, doesn't it? I mean, to be here, it was my birthday yesterday, so I was 47 now. I'm sitting not very far away from the bowler hat that I was bought for my birthday by my parents when I was 15. To just be able to make a Laurel and Hardy documentary about something that probably not many people know, so you can introduce people to a new story, but at the same time hark back to these two legends and kind of hopefully encourage people to check out maybe other films or their life or the biography or just you pinch yourself, you think to yourself, how did I get here? How did you often put things away, like we've said about you're told to grow up, you're taught that at a certain age you should like a certain thing and you should be into a certain thing, and you kind of, or you become pompous and you kind of go, well, no, I'm going to wear a suit and a tie now, and I'm going to be really, really serious, and that's going to be my persona. And I went down that route. I went down that route of not actually showing my true interests, but also my true personality. I was trying to be too serious in a lot of the work that I was doing, and I didn't follow a lot of the things that actually made me happy. And now, having done that, going back to the little films that I made, probably even at the university, like doing that, which I'm quite embarrassed about, that we went off and did it, and the actual drama thing that we made, it doesn't really stand up. It's really amateurish, but I didn't know I had any skills at that point. But also going off into, it seems crazy, going off into a park dressed up as Laurel and Hardy as a teenager when everybody else was going off to the pub and all that kind of thing, but you then look back and go, you make these decisions that kind of lead to, like you've led to this podcast. Andy's, is contacting Charlie Williams, because of his relationship with his father, and that's kind of led on to this career that's led him to this Laurel and Hardy story. But to me, it's like you look back on your life and all these little things, and you kind of, something's steering you. We can look up and is something steering us, but there's also that thing of you making your own look, and if something's strong enough in your life, it's that old thing about just being yourself. When you try and be somebody else, you're never truly happy, are you? No. When you start being yourself, it's suddenly things start falling into place. And this is one of those things, and I'm immensely proud of it. I'm immensely proud of having met Andy, and I'm immensely proud of being here talking to you about Laurel and Hardy, which, again, I would have absolutely never thought this would be possible as a young kid or even at university. Like, you're going to go on a show and talk about Laurel and 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 all the imagery that goes through your head while you're talking about it. That's a great thing about, you can do a radio show, a podcast like this, and you've got all those images, that you've recorded through your eyes into your brain as a child, and they play out while you're discussing, and you imagine things. You're imagining Laurel and Hardy as older men, going back to write their scripts in this Dunleary hotel. Kind of you fill in the blanks, of the fairy tale, like you said. It's like a fairy tale.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely right. It's a lovely thing. I mean, you should be very proud of the film. It is very clearly made with a lot of heart and a lot of love for the subject, which is all any fan can ask. And I think you've done a wonderful tribute to the boys. Absolutely. And it's that, as you were saying, to be able to affect how viewers, or in my case listeners or readers with the magazine, to be able to affect their lives in a small way, to inspire them to want to revisit the films, is such a rewarding thing. I mean, when I get feedback from listeners and readers of the magazine to say, I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much. It's got me through a really tough time. I'm now watching all the films along with the podcast. Or, as I said to you before, I've got a 12-year-old boy called Sammy who, for quite a few months, has been listening to my podcast as his bedtime story.
Fantastic.
And it's such a wonderful thing, And this is just because I decided one day I'd like to listen to a Laurel and Hardy podcast, and there wasn't one. And I thought, what do I do? I'll just have to make one, and that's it, and then you start reaching out to people and it all just comes together. It's fabulous. Fabulous. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm going to ask you one final question. Okay, I have to ask this to everybody. I have to ask, he says, the atoll question. Okay, so you are both about to be stranded on different deserted atolls, I have to say. You're not on the same one, so I'm sorry about that. But you are being allowed to take with you 4 Laurel and Hardy related items with you. So you are both allowed a silent short, a talkie short, a feature film, and a Laurel and Hardy related book. So can you tell me what your choices are and just briefly explain why? Or, well, not don't have to be briefly explain why. You can go off at length if you like. We'll do it one at a time. So we'll have Andy's silent short, and then we'll have your silent short, Matt, and we'll do it that way, I think, and sort of mix it up a little bit. So, Andy, what silent short of Laurel and Hardy would you like to keep on your atoll?
I'd love to take Flying Elephants. It's just so silly, and it kind of stands out on its own, really. I love this.
I was not expecting that. I was not expecting Flying Elephants.
I told you he was weird, didn't I? I told you.
I thought you were joking. Then I was waiting for the. Not really. Go. Tell me about Flying Elephants. That's great.
There's some shots of Stan where he looks like Charles Hawtrey. That really makes me laugh. I love the clouds of dust as they run along. Get little clouds of dust, and that really makes me laugh. Obviously, there's Fiddlerson in there, and I like the music, and it's just really silly, and I'm really excited. I know this thing's come out, this Blu-ray, which I can't afford right now, but I will get one, and I'm really excited because the print that I've got on a DVD is absolutely atrocious. But
you're going to love this. You will love.
Yeah,
the Blu-ray.
I'm very excited about seeing the clouds of dust as they run along.
That's fantastic. Well, you are the first person, Andy, I have to say, who has selected Flying Elephants on your... So I have a copy easily available for that, no problem at all. That's great. And for you, Matt, what are you having?
Well, it's going to have to be Liberty. I know that's probably been mentioned many, many times, but I like the fact it hits the ground running. So you start off and they're running away from something. And in that perfect Laurel and Hardy way of running, which has been aped in, cartoons, but also in like the Far Side Gallery and all those kind of things. So, and I love the bit where it's really early on, where they jump out of the car, and Ollie, there's a cop on a motorbike that's been chasing the car. They both jump out, Stan and Ollie, and Ollie pretends to Stan that he's selling in this car. He pretends that. And he's just pointing. And again, it's so modern. It's such, you could see that in Ricky Gervais doing it. You could see that in some, quick, let's pretend we're, buying something, or look at your shop, looking at the shop window. There's that. There's Stan's leg acting, which is absolutely fantastic. My grandfather, the one that was the son of the music hall comedian, he had bow legs.
Right.
So we always used to say that when he ran, he looked like an egg whisk. Now, when you see Stan on top of those girders, he does this wobbly leg thing, which is absolutely hilarious. In real life, I've never actually seen anybody so frightened that their knees knock. I've seen it in cartoons, I've seen it in comic books, but he's literally, and the look on his face of fright, and his hair's all sticking up anyway, because it always does. But that wobbly leg thing, which then, becomes refined and into Way Out West, where it's part of a dance, and often he does it as almost like a mock Charleston. Yeah. But that egg whisk thing, but also how it's shot as a filmmaker. I mean, I know you've talked about it before on the podcast about, CGI and all that kind of thing. I don't really do CGI. I don't really watch a lot of films that are CGI. But not just that, the fact they shot it on top of a building with the real thing in the background. they don't actually go very, very wide. So you never see a really, really, really wide shot of Stan and Ollie as like two little ants on top of this thing. You don't need to. It's almost like Hitchcock with the Psycho. A lot of it's in your head. You're putting it together that they're, it's a tight frame, and obviously they must have safety nets or the platform just out of shot. So they never actually pull that wide, but it's all in the fear on their faces. You fill in the gaps. It's like, when often in Laurel and Hardy films where they leave the frame and you hear the operatic Oliver Hardy, oh, and you're filling in. He's left the scene, he's left the frame, and you're filling the sound effects like you would get in cartoons, and you're filling in all the gaps. And there's that with Liberty where you're filling in all the gaps, and your stomach goes over, and there's loads of bits. I mean, even to this day, I don't understand how the crab gets blown away, but then it crawls along the girder.
Yeah.
It literally flung out into the air, and that must be a boomerang crab because it comes back and bites him on the toe. But also the bit with the ladder as well, where Stan is pulling the rope on the ladder, and again, there's a cut in that part where you don't actually see the ladder. It's kind of cut just before, and so it goes from like the wobbly ladder thing to Stan leaping off the ladder onto the. It's not together, but you fill it in, and it's only by watching it a few times recently. You put a lot of this stuff together because you're going along with this story, and you're wanting them to get back. And again, I like Liberty because I like the ones where Stan and Ollie get out pretty much unscathed. And it has a nice conclusion. I'm not a fan of Stan's scary endings or horrible endings where limbs have been removed and wrapped around the neck, or they've. I want to see Stan and Ollie leave the picture again, ready to go off on another adventure. So that's what I like. That's why I like Liberty. Is the fact they do get out of it unharmed, unlike the policeman that's at the bottom of the lift shaft, which has to obviously go and get new clothes because he's half the height he was. But yeah, Liberty's my one.
That's a great choice. That's a really good choice. And what's interesting about Liberty as well, I'm sure you know, the first reel of Liberty is actually the offcut from the film before, from We Four Down, where they changing and I love that swapping trousers business where they keep on getting caught. That's just hilarious. I love that. I think I like the first reel better than the second reel, and that's great. Yeah. But just that whole kind of, yeah, I know what you're up to. You know, it's just really funny. Brilliant. That's great. Okay, two very interesting choices, Andy. I'm going to say interesting choices, but all good.
Where's it going to go from here, Andy? I'm worried now. I'm worried.
It can't go any worse than that. That's a good one. Okay, let's go talkie short. Andy, what's your talkie short?
Well, I actually, on revisiting the films, I don't really like the features very much. I thought I loved the features, and I much prefer the shorts. And there's so many that I really, really love. But I can love a film because of one shot. And Another Fine Mess, that initial shot of them running down the street just makes me laugh so much. I love the weird twins introduction.
So you're Agnes.
Yes, ma'am.
My, what a striking resemblance between you and the butler.
Yes, ma'am. You see, I'm twins.
How remarkable.
The yes, ma'am just makes me howl. The music is really, really subtle. The use of the horn, and when Stan comes out of the door, they play the cuckoo like he's a cuckoo coming out of a cuckoo clock.
Yes.
I love the blinds and the curtains gag that just spins and spins and spins. Thelma Todd and Finlayson are in there. The name Hives makes me howl.
What is it, Hives?
Plumtree's laugh.
Is this the home of Colonel Wilberforce Buckshot?
Yes, sir.
Well, I understand this place is for rent.
Is it? I mean, it is, yes.
Of course it is. I am Lord Leopold Plantry. My car.
When the double take when Buckshot comes back, when Babe, the double take that he does, he's just howling, and the ending is just perfect. That ridiculous thing where the bike cuts in half, and they're dressed as that canoe or whatever it is. It's perfect from start to finish, and it's really Keystone, and it's really Roadrunner. It's just fantastic. It's perfect from start to finish. It's just beautiful.
That's great.
It's interesting that Andy saying that he loves it from one frame. Obviously, being a photographer, he's kind of gone in with that, that single image.
Yes.
Yes.
From there, that's interesting, isn't it?
And another one that starts with them running.
Yeah. It's a running gag.
Hey. So how do you feel? Well, very good. That's excellent. So, how do you feel, Andy, about Duck Soup? Because obviously, Another Fine Mess is a remake.
Correct,
How do you feel about that one?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm afraid I get really annoyed about the if it's a dirty print or it's not particularly good. I want it to be better, but yeah, it is. As you say, it's completely based on it, and it's great. It's very funny, really good.
Yeah. And again, if you do get the Blu-ray, the Duck Soup is just wonderful. Serge Bromberg, who was in charge of the restorations, he sent me a preview copy of Duck Soup, and I was just blown away by it. The amount of more screen that you can see. It's such a big, because it was like I said this to him. It was like looking through a dirty keyhole. The original one that I'd got, it's like dark around the edges. It's just a very tight image. So much more that you can see, and such clarity. It's just. It is like watching these films for the first time.
Well, I'm a huge Méliès fan, and they restored the little titch clip, and they restored all the Méliès stuff, and that's just stunning. It's incredible.
Yeah, they do great work.
I think the timing of your podcast though is perfect because you're coming to the end of the silence, and I'm the same. I'm hanging on for this Blu-ray. I don't really want to rewatch any silent stuff. And even though I've been listening along to podcasts and it's like, I'd love to go and revisit that, but I'm waiting to get the Blu-ray. So the timing is perfect that you're coming to the end of it, and loads of people, I imagine Christmas time, they're going to be rushing out, getting the Blu-ray. And
yeah, I hope so. Yeah. I really hope so, because that is what it is all about. It's to inspire people to do that exactly. And again, it comes back to this thing with, I started this just on a whim. And the timing of it has just come round to exactly that. The silence of we're just getting to the end of it. This Blu-ray comes out. Next year, obviously, we'll have the 1928 Year 2 Blu-ray. Hopefully, fingers crossed, just as my book on the silence comes out. And again, the timing of it is all just perfect. It's, I'm sure Stan and Babe are up there saying, right, okay, let's just work this out. What's going to come out when? What do people need? Let's get it sorted. So,
if we see a horse with a moustache and a bowler hat on, with his head over a fence, then we need to,
That's right.
We need to go and speak to that horse.
Well, here's another nice mess you've gotten me into.
Ollie, is that really you?
Of course it's me.
Exactly. Fantastic. Okay, so Matt, we need your talkie short, sir.
So Busybodies is Martin.
Brilliant.
You've got Tiny Sanford and Charlie Hall. So we spoke about Finlayson, obviously, but I like the beginning bit. They're driving down the road again. It's not running this time, driving down the road. But I don't you notice in the background the tiny palm trees?
Yeah.
Well, obviously those palm trees now are massive. They were kind of like planted. So there's that kind of, it shows you that early Hollywood of like, it's all in its infancy. These things have been plopped up there, and now the same street. But this is the crazy thing about the car. They've invented like the car stereo. Well, the car with the record player in it.
What a beautiful morning. Turn on the radio and let's have some music.
And it's a beautiful, sunny day, and I forget the line now. My mind's going, but Ollie turns to Stan and goes,
Why, even you look bright this morning.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But they set up this beautiful day, and you think to yourself, how have they got these jobs as carpenters, and they've got this car and then Hollywood, and then the whole thing kind of then starts falling apart, doesn't it? As they get, but it's the classic thing of they've got the bowler hats on still, but they're in the overalls, and it starts off with them annoying Charlie Hall. Obviously, he blasts the horn as Charlie's got all those planks. He throws them all up in the air.
Clumsy.
Yeah.
And then there's the bit where Stan obviously does you think he's going one way with it, you think he's actually stitched Ollie up, and he's like, oh, that's not very nice, and then suddenly gives Charlie a cigar and then dobs him into the foreman for smoking, and gets chucked out. But I love the bit, there's two bits where I love it when that circular saw drops on Ollie's head.
Yeah.
Oh!
It's just perfect. I could watch that over and over again. I just love it when things that are flat drop on his head from a height. It's often, the glass in the top of a door or something, but you just think that routine's finished with the nail in the water and everything else.
Yeah.
And he just took his hat off and it lands flat, and you just see the sound effect is perfect.
Yeah,
that's wonderful. And then the end of that whole sequence after the beard, that's been made out of the glued on brush, and he's finally got that. And you've got all the soap, and he pulls the hose, and that sink comes flying towards him. And again, I can just watch that over and over again. It's like, just as you think that it couldn't be any worse, he gets hit in the face with the sink. And then, of course, goes on to fall down a chute and, gets fired out and squashes the house and all that kind of stuff. But it just builds and builds and builds. And it's, even the bit with the plank at the beginning, which, it's quite pantomime. And I think, because when you see these things over and over again, reference as the years go on, like famously in The Plank, the Tommy Cooper and Eric Sykes thing. But with just to keep going backwards to pick up the lunchbox, just when you think they've milked this plank gag one more time, Ollie looks left, looks right, pauses, tiptoes out, a bit like, a Homer Simpson, picks up these lunchbox, turns around, the plank goes by, smack, he's straight into it again. They get another gag out of that. It's just,
Yeah.
I just think that there must have been the gag writer said, we're going to do it in a sawmill. Oh, great. Got nails, got
that's right.
Got all this stuff to be playing with. And, it was a lot of fun, wasn't it? They just played with that. Yeah. They set the location up and just kind of went to town on, and, and the ending it of literally like a whole great big shed gets demolished by Ollie. Ooh. And those, I love that Ollie's operatic screams. I never tire of them.
No,
and the longer they are, the longer and the higher, and the more they tail off into like the distance, the funnier it is for me.
Yes.
I love those. It's very much like Tom and Jerry, Tom's Scream and Tom and Jerry cartoons. And I only just found out only a few months ago that they did that by having somebody scream, but then they chopped off the front as it grows. And so it just starts at the yeah. It's really clever, really, really good. But no, Ollie is just fantastic. The noises that he makes, even just the short, just that little.
Yeah, which you can see that in The Simpsons, can't you? Obviously Doe has been, we know the Finlayson Doe thing, but there's also there's a lot of that in Homer gets hit by, there's a lot of that that's carried on. Great,
brilliant. I love Busybodies. To be honest, I love any of the like the blue collar ones where they're in the overalls and Job to Do. I just love all of that. It's just fantastic. Okay, so Andy, you don't like the feature films, so which one are you going to choose?
Well, I've chosen A Chump at Oxford because it feels like 3 or 4 shorts sewn together. You've got the bits with the water truck and the bits where he's patting the water off his coat. It's just so utterly ridiculous. And then they get this job and they go to the house.
What a strange-looking person.
Well, what do you expect on a few hours' notice? If you'd have gone to the trouble we did to get us the job...
What she means is that this is the best they could do up on such short notice.
Oh, never mind, dear. Any old port in a storm,
I suppose you're right. Call Pierre. What's your name?
My name is Ollie, and this is Agnes.
And the bit where Stan gets drunk and he's lying on the chaise longue and you see the smoke rings coming up from the pipe, that just makes me howl. And then he goes, "Why don't you be careful? You almost blew my brains out." Which is just fantastic. And then outside the bank, I'm sure you'll have noticed, but in the window it says Finlayson National Bank.
That's right.
Which just delights me. I love little things like that.
Well, here we are at last, right down in the gutter. I wonder what's the matter with us. We're just as good as other people, yet we don't seem to advance ourselves. We never get any place.
You know what the trouble is, don't you? We've never had no education. That's what's the matter. You see, we're not illiterate enough.
I guess you're right.
Sure I'm right. You see, if we went to school like other people, we would learn our 3 R's, and today there'd be no job too small for us. Believe me.
What do you mean, 3 R's?
Well, reading, writing, and figuring.
Figuring?
Sure. You know, 2 and 2 make something, and 4 and 4 make something. It's different to the first.
You mean arithmetic?
Yeah, I knew what it meant, but I couldn't say it.
All the business with the sandwiches in the street and dropping the things that they've been sweeping up. We haven't eaten since breakfast. It's brilliant.
So this is Oxford.
Yes, sir. I think we're going to like it here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, pardon me, but haven't you come to the wrong college?
Well, this is Oxford, isn't it?
Yes, but you're dressed for Eton.
Well, that's swell. We haven't eaten since breakfast, have we?
Haven't eaten since breakfast.
And then they go to Oxford, and there's Peter Cushing. And you're like, oh my God, it's Peter Cushing, which is amazing. I love the soda siphons in the bed and the hands in the maze. But the absolute thing for me is the wiggling ears. It's just absolute joy. It really is just wonderful. And the relief of Ollie at the end when Stan comes back as his pal. That's really lovely. And I know it's just a silly thing, but it's a nice thing. And I thought I would, because I'm such a film fan, I thought, okay, well, you know, features will be the ones for me, but ironically, I like the shorts.
Yeah, I think that's quite common, actually. I mean, even Stan said the shorts were where they were best. That was their format, and I think there are arguably, you know, Sons of the Desert, Way Out West, I think are probably the 2 best features for me. You know, they are just. They don't feel as if they've been drawn out. You know, as you say, Chumpwood Oxford is great, but it feels like it's just a load of little things mushed together. Sons and Way Out West are just 2 wonderful films that are perfect. I would say they're probably perfect.
They're more of an arc of a story, aren't they? You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And they feel like a short. They have a short. They feel like a short. They don't feel as if they've been dragged out. So, but no, it's quite common for people to. Prefer the shorts. Yeah, absolutely. So don't feel bad about that.
Okay.
That's fine. That's fine. Matt, what are you having?
Well, you kind of stole my thunder with Way Out West. And I know it's an obvious one. But going back to what I said about you to tape, as a child, take the films off of the television. For some reason, my copy, I must have got rushed around to find my Laurel and Hardy cassette and put it in late. Because it starts with them with the mule and then walking across, Stan's dragging Ollie. So for years, I didn't know the beginning bit at all. I'd never seen the opening credits until they started to put the restored ones on the cinema, and I went as an adult. And it started, and I was like, wow, there's a whole saloon scene with dancing girls and cowboys and like a bit of a vaudeville thing where Finlayson's being heckled and all that stuff. Reminded me a little bit of Tex Avery cartoons, which I'm also a fan of. And so I kind of really fell in love with it again. Block and tackle routine. The bit, and I don't know whether you're the same, but there's a few lines that I always do with friends or whatever. And me and my cousin are very, very close, with only a year between us. And so we always used to put Laughing Gravy on at Christmas together to watch it. It became like a tradition that we just, because it was on 1 year, and we just thought, let's do it every year. why should it just be 1 year? But I always go, I'm going to spit on my hands. And that bit where he says, there's that beat. So Stan's pulling the block up with Ollie. They're trying to get him through the window. And you always think, why don't you just go around the back? You know, why don't you just go somewhere? No, obviously it's much easier to go through. So Stan's hoisting. There's a point where he pauses. And the camera angles on this is great as well, because there's a point of view shot looking down. There's a point of view shot looking up. They've really gone to town on it. And you get Ollie's point of view, and Stan's just said,
wait a minute, I'll spit on me hands.
And Ollie whispers, all right. He actually replies to it. Then Stan lets go of the rope, and Ollie stays where he is, spits on his hands. There's like a beat, and Ollie comes crashing down, leaves a massive crater. That then Ollie stands up and steps down into the crater, almost to ignore it, and then steps back out again. That whole routine. But there's loads of stuff like that in Way Out West. You've got the songs. But the other thing as well is I just love the fact that there's a great narrative structure. There's that hero's journey of they come in to do a job. They need to find Mary Roberts and sort out the give her the deed and all that kind of thing. And all the stuff happens, and they get left. All the calamities happen, and the magic finger and all the other stuff, and eating the hat, and they keep the continuity of that. That Ollie's still got the bits of the hat out at the end. But I love the fact that they leave together at the end, all three of them, with Mary Roberts, and it's like, well, now that our troubles are over, what are we going to do now?
Well, I'd like to go back to the town where I was born.
Where is that?
Way down south.
Are you from the South?
I sure am.
Well, fan my brow. I'm from the South.
You are?
Mm-hmm.
Well, shut my mouth. I's from the south, too.
South of what, sir?
The south of London.
London. Well, honey, we'll all go down to Dixie. Oh, for a slice of possum and yam.
Ooh, yes, sir, and some good old fish and chips. I can smell them.
Fish and chips.
And I love that. You could have just ended, obviously they went on to make loads of other films and of diminishing returns. But it's just great I love it when they leave. And obviously there's a bit where Ollie goes down the same hole, and we kind of think he's going to come back out of that, as the credits roll, he's going to come back out of that. Yes. But it's great that you've got that perfect arc, story arc, and I love that's. And as a kid, I loved it, and then when I saw it at the cinema again, I came out of the cinema absolutely overjoyed. And
it's a great film.
I mean, they're back on at the cinema again, aren't they? With the
in
October,
that's right.
in the UK with Dirty Work and Sons of the Desert, and again, you take your friends, spread the word.
Yeah.
If they're not Laurel and Hardy fans, take them to see them in a cinema with an audience, and it comes to life even more than when you've watched them on the TV or wherever, however you've watched them over the years. Seeing them where they should be seen is a real treat.
Yeah. Definitely. No, it's a wonderful choice. Way Out West is fabulous, and what I love about it is I think it's so, as you say, they went to town on it. It's such a believable world they've created of this Wild West. So well done. And funnily enough, when you were talking at the start, Matt, about watching your grandfather laughing, I remember my dad laughing at this particular film. That the moment where Lola comes out with the deed. And that bit just absolutely used to slay my dad, and well, still does, I'm sure.
But also, do you notice a bit with Lola where the scene with the bed where they're trying to get the lock in, that obviously tickling laughing scene. The actress, Sharon Lynn, she can't stop laughing. And as kids, we used to, me and my cousin always used to point and go, look. Because Stan's getting high, his voice is getting higher and higher, and it's so funny, and you're laughing at it. But she can't do the take without. She's turning away from the camera. She's wrestling with him, and she's trying to mask her face because she can't stop laughing. I don't know how many takes they must have done, but there's bits like that where it's great because it breaks down the whole magic of the film. But you just think they must have had so much fun doing that.
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant choice. I love it. Absolutely love it. Okay, so we move on now to your final item, which is your Laurel and Hardy related book. And Matt, you've just been reading Luvish again.
Yeah, I'm not going to choose Luvish, but it's tough. As I said, John McCabe were the ones that I had. They've all faded now. I've literally got them out recently, and they've been on my shelf, and I had them such a long time. Yeah. Then went on to the Luvish, a bit older because of the influence on Neil Brand. It is Neil Brand, isn't it? Stan. Stan.
Yes, it is.
Influence on his play, a radio play, but also on Stan and Ollie. You can see it there. But I think it's going to have to be Laurel and Hardy, The Magic Behind the Movies. Randy Screpford. I was lucky enough that I've met Randy, filmed Randy, even sang and played a ukulele with Randy. But his book. If you're going to be on a desert island, that's the book that's going to keep you occupied. And there's things in it like, I didn't know that Laughing Gravy, I've loved that film. I didn't know that Laughing Gravy was the slang for liquor, that it's the gravy that makes you laugh.
Yeah.
And they're called, and that dog then went on to, I think Charlie Hall bought one of the puppies on the lot. It was like a dog.
That's right.
There's all that stuff in there, which is fantastic. So you find out about the films from Randy, but you find out all these other bits. And it's such a big book that he's obviously revisited in 2019. It's a much bigger one than the original one. And although it's tough, there's so many great Laurel and Hardy books, but it's going to be Laurel and Hardy, The Magic Behind the Movies, Randy Skretvitt.
The expanded edition or the original?
Expanded edition.
Because
if you're going to be stuck on this atoll,
absolutely.
Even if you need kindling, you're going to need.
that thing would burn for months.
You could still have half the book left,
Yeah, absolutely right. That's great. And it's the size of a mattress as well, so you could actually just bed down on it. Superb.
Perfect.
Andy, what are you going for?
Well, I also love Lubish and John McCabe and Liam's book. We've got to mention Liam's book Near Dublin because it was great as a source for us. But I'm going to choose Spot On by Michael Ehrecht.
Great choice. Okay.
Because I'm a very visual person, and it's a very visual book, and it focuses on the tours as opposed to all the other books. Really focus quite rightly on the films. It's got that brilliant CD with the audio content, which was a thrill for me while we were looking at this film and also while we were editing the pictures and stuff. And he's done a lovely job, and he's gathered in all these really amazing things, and there are tickets in there. So I'm desperately trying to find as many Laurel and Hardy tickets as I can, and I found about 8 original vintage tickets. So the fact that he's got tickets in there gets me very excited.
That's great. That's a lovely choice. It's a beautiful book, actually. I mean, we had Nico on, who co-authored it with Michael. Yeah. One of the very early episodes. I think it was Leave 'Em Laughing we were talking about. Fascinating just to hear about how they were putting it together and why they did the big sort of square format. Because they wanted it to be like an LP, because it was to do with the audio as well. And just those large images. A really beautiful book, actually, really, really nice, and it's quite niche because it's obviously the end of their career, but actually it's just such a beautiful thing. You've got to, as a fan, you've got to have it because it's a big part of the whole Laurel and Hardy story. Yeah. Beautiful thing, and of course they've got another one coming out very, very soon, hopefully, fingers crossed, to do with the later years. But it's on Michael's website. It's that's again should be a really, and that's got, I think that says DVD with it as well this time.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's some real rare film clips from the later years. So really looking forward to it. Great, excellent stuff. Well, I think you'll be very happy on your islands. So
the good thing, Andy can use a CD though, can't he, to try and get a passing ship?
Signal. Yeah, you're right.
I haven't got that. That's not fair. I should have thought of that. Yeah. I should have thought of
or improve his tan. He could shine it onto his own face and get it.
Somebody should bring a Laurel and Hardy book that's got an inflatable raft that you can for this particular question.
I should have that in my book next year. Brilliant. I should pack it in.
I'll buy
Comes
that.
with an inflatable raft for your atoll.
Great.
I love it.
Great.
That's a great idea. Gentlemen, thank you so much. If you can hang on for a little bit of a Patreon additional question or two, that would be great. But for the meantime, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been lovely to spend this time with you and to listen to your experiences making the film. Congratulations. It is a work of art, and I'm sure as soon as more and more people start to see it, you'll start getting all the feedback that you deserve. So well done, and thanks for coming on today.
Thank you. Should we just, Andy, do you want to plug where people can see it next?
Yes, I would love to do
yes.
that.
Yes, do that.
Now, obviously, we're trying to find places to show the film that have meaning to Laurel and Hardy. So Cobh was our first one. That was a premiere. And on Saturday, November the 25th, we are showing it at the Glasgow Panopticon, which is, of course, where Stan told his very first joke. And we're very excited because a good pal of mine, Norrie Wilson, is going to do a Q&A with us, and details to follow. But if you keep watching the Glasgow Panopticon website, the Britannia Music Hall, it'll pop up there, and we're really excited about that.
Yeah,
Wonderful, wonderful. Oh, well, thank you for that. You heard it here first. That's great. Well, I'll if you can send me the links to anything that promotes it, I can put that onto the show notes to the podcast, and anybody that is listening, you can just click straight on it and take them straight to the Panopticon website or wherever's best. That's great. Gentlemen, thank you so much, and hopefully we'll speak to you again in the future sometime with your next film, your sequel.
Yes. What will that be? Yeah. Goodbye.
Cheers, guys.
Goodbye.
That's great.
Goodbye.
So there we are. I hope you enjoyed this bonus episode of the podcast. Do look out for screenings of the guys' film, The Last Dance of the Cuckoos, and I promise you won't be disappointed. And don't forget, if you're a patron of the podcast, you can now access a further 30 minutes or so of my discussion with Andy and Matt, in which I ask them which Laurel and Hardy film they would banish to Bogeyland. And if you're not a patron yet, and you'd like to access all the exclusive podcasts and more benefits besides, then you can sign up for a small few pounds, euros, dollars, or whatever currency you use at patreon.com. That's patreon.com, and just search for the Laurel and Hardy podcast. Or, even easier, just click the link in the show notes. Also, if you're interested in subscribing to our all-new Laurel and Hardy magazine, you can do just that by visiting www.laurelandhardyfilms.com. That's Laurel, A-N-D, and hardyfilms.com. The summer 2023 issue is out now and is focused on the boys' classic short, Helpmates, with exclusive articles by Randy Skretvet and Serge Bromberg. Next time, it's business as usual as we resume our deep dive into the Laurel and Hardy film canon, and our attention turns to the very final silent short the boys made, Angora Love. So a huge thank you to today's guests, Matt Holt and Andy Hollingworth. A huge thanks to Bo Hunk's Orchestra and Basta Music for the wonderful music. And thank you so much to you for joining us. And until next time, it's goodbye from him.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from him.
Goodbye.
And it's a very goodbye from me. Goodbye.
Bye.